Hello there, all you absolutely lovely people. This is Dax Allred, and today we are going to talk about none other than the great Terence McKenna. That's right, Terence McKenna, the Mushroom Man himself. Now, what can you say about Terence McKenna? Well, for starters, the man was a genius. But before we get into that, let me explain to you what I mean when I call a person a genius. You see, there is a difference between a genius and a person who is just really smart. And the difference between the two of them is this. A person who is just really smart is only capable of building upon the ideas of other people. A genius, on the other hand, is capable of realizing that there is something out there that needs to be studied that everyone else completely ignores. For example, sidestep a little bit here and talk about Sir Isaac Newton. That man was also a genius. For those of you who do not know, Sir Isaac Newton, the man who discovered gravity. Now, the thing about gravity is things have been falling downward for as long as matter has existed. There were plenty of really smart people out there who just simply took it for granted that if you pick something up and you let it go, it falls down. And that's all that they noticed about it. It took a genius like Sir Isaac Newton to go, wait a minute, there must be a reason why something is falling. There must be something making that happen. And thus, gravity was discovered. Well, Terence McKenna, he's a genius. He's not just a really smart guy, he's a genius. Because when most people get high on mushrooms, they just get high on mushrooms. And yes, they have an amazing experience and everything, but it took a man like Terence McKenna to go, wait a minute, there's something here that needs to be studied. There's something here that needs to be understood. And that is what I mean when I am calling Terence McKenna a genius. I want you to understand the scale that I'm talking about here. Now, one of the problems I have when discussing Terence McKenna is that I personally have never done any shrooms. I have never done any ayahuasca, anything like that. It's a personal soul mission for me. My soul mission is you're not allowed to get high in this lifetime. And so that does put me at a disadvantage when discussing the subject matter of Terence McKenna. However, you do not need to get high to recognize this man's mind. I mean, this man truly has a phenomenal mind, but in addition to that, he is also eloquent, which, well, it basically made his career. No matter how intelligent you are, you're not going to pack rooms full of people wanting to hear you speak unless you can really make it entertaining. So I really think that it was his eloquence that made his career.
No animal does this. It must have something to do with the acquisition of language by human beings. And what I think is going on is that probably language was entertainment long before it was meaning. That it's a kind of tuneless singing. And that having discovered that we could make an almost endless repertoire of small mouth noises, we did this for each other, for amusement, to pass the time. I mean, God knows there was a lot of it. And it probably was very late in the evolution of this ability that some very tight-assed rational type said, you know, we could attach a specific meaning to a specific sound, and then every time I made that sound, you'd know what I meant, and then you could go and get it for me. You see? It's a sort of, it's the as long as you're up, get me a grants theory of language.
Now, I enjoy just listening to Terence McKenna. I'm one of these people that will gladly hop on YouTube and listen to 2 or 3 hours of him just very eloquently describing away his experiences, throwing in some humor based on his very sharp but dry wit. You know, I find his intelligence very entertaining. However, as much as I love Terence McKenna and as much as I marvel at him, there are 2 aspects to Terence McKenna that I would not be doing this video justice if I did not bring this up. The first of the 2 points is his 0-point theory. Now, his 0-point theory, it was fascinating and it did appear to be authentic at the time. Basically, his 0-point theory said that all events were doubling at a rate where they were leading to a singularity in time, upon which, once we hit that singularity, time would no longer exist. And that singularity was supposed to be in the year 2012. It is currently 2017. So at least here in this timeline, it might have actually happened in several other people's timelines, but here in the timeline that I am in, it did not happen. It's 2017. Time is still going on. So even though he had some brilliant insights and brilliant ideas, the idea of his that he appeared to be the most proud of and the most fascinated by did not happen. At least not in this reality. Now, of course, what I'm getting into here are personal reality tunnels. I'll have to talk about that in another video. If you know what I'm talking about, you understand what I mean. If not, well, I'll post a video on the subject at some point in time. The other aspect to Terence McKenna that I need to bring up, and it makes me lose respect for a man that I admire, he has a tendency to be very cruel and mocking towards anyone that he disagrees with. He particularly tends to go after people in the UFO community, abductees, people who claim to have been abducted by aliens. Now, first of all, I don't care if you believe that people are being abducted or not. That's not the subject that I'm getting at here. The problem is that he would routinely, ruthlessly, and cruelly go after anyone who claimed to be an abductee. One of the things that he likes to make fun of, he likes to make fun of Whitley Strieber. All the jokes that Terence McKenna would make about the anal probe is geared directly at Whitley Strieber. Because that is one of the statements that Whitley Strieber made is he was raped. He was raped. He's even got the medical data to prove that he was raped. He's got it on his website, unknowncountry.com. You know, basically he was inspected for some pain down in the lower areas, and the doctor investigated it and he said, "Man, you've been raped." And Terence McKenna chose to be a fucking prick about this and went after him.
And I said, what do you think of the abduction phenomenon? And without hesitation, this person said, there are just so many foolish people in the world. And to me, all of these things are intelligence tests. And the people who pass the intelligence test are not worrying about pro bono proctologists from other star systems showing up unannounced in their bedrooms.
So even if you don't go with the alien thing, here's a man who suffered a trauma, and Terence McKenna had zero empathy for it. He was just a total prick. And so, as much as I admire Terence McKenna, these are 2 things that I have to call him out on. I don't really go too hard on him for the 0-point theory thing, because it was still a good idea. It was still a fascinating subject, and what he was observing seemed to be pointing towards this singularity in time. However, it appears to be a good idea that was wrong. But what I do hold against Terence McKenna, as much as I love him, is the way he went after Whitley Strieber for his abduction scenario. When you contact Whitley Strieber and you communicate with him on the subject, he is still in a lot of pain about the way Terence McKenna came after him on this. Enough of the negativity. I think I've made my point on those 2 points that I do have to call out Terence McKenna on. Terence McKenna has a lot of fascinating things to say, particularly on the subject of plants being entities, which this is not a new thing. Carlos Castaneda discussed how plants are an entity in many of his books. So this isn't a new subject, but Terence McKenna did take it to another level because he was viewing the entire subject of hallucinogens as something that you need to study. And I really am fascinated by his descriptions of entities that he has met within the drug.
Everything's normal, yeah, everything's normal. Oh, God. Because these things are there, and they're hammering at you, and they come forward. They're like jeweled, self-dribbling basketballs. And there are many of them, and they come pounding toward you, and they will stop in front of you and vibrate, but then they do a very disconcerting thing, which is they jump into your body. They jump into your body, and then they jump back out again. And the whole thing is going on in this very high-speed mode where you're being presented with thousands of details per second, and you can't get a hold on, you say, my God, what's happening? And these things are saying, don't abandon yourself to amazement, which is exactly what you want to do. You just want to go.
I realize that the drug is an ingredient inside what he was taking. What he was taking was not the drug itself, but it's just easier to describe it that way. But anyway, I think I've said enough about Terence McKenna. Wonderful guy. I really wish that I had have met him and a shooting star just flew across the sky. Quite fascinating. I really wish that I could have met Terence McKenna. I would have loved to have just, I don't even know about picking his brain. I would have loved to have just listened to him, because he really discusses an area that I know nothing about. And in order to really pick someone's brain, you have to know something about the subject. But I would have loved the opportunity to have just listened to him, in person. Ask him a few questions here and there. As usual, people pass on. Anyway, once again, I am Dax Allred. This video is the 7th video of my 30-day challenge. A video a day, every day for 30 days, no matter what. And so I do thank you for joining me on this. One thing that I want you to remember is that you are important, you are loved, your needs are valid, and the same is also true for everyone else. I love you very much.